Well, this is different. Hello, all you crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games, and also chickens, and lighting shaders. I like lighting shaders. I've made a number of videos on lighting shaders in the past couple weeks, and in the last few days, I've thrown a bunch of them together into a single GameMaker extension that you can use in your games to do 3D lighting. I've realized that might run a little bit counter to the idea of making tutorial videos so that people know how things work. But while I do think it's important to know how these things work so that you can do it yourself and expand upon them yourself, I also think there's something to be said for not reinventing the wheel constantly. Hence this extension. So this is Luminous chickens. I like chickens. This does a few things. You have your usual directional lights, your point lights. It also has spotlights or cone lights, as some people call them, as well as fog effects, which you can use to make things fade out at a distance. So here's a video explaining how this is going to work. So I've got the itch.io page here, which I made, where you can download this. There's no video at the top of it currently because that's what this is going to be in a few hours. So you can read a little bit about what this does. There's also a fancy download button at the bottom, which does exactly what you think it does. Once you've downloaded the YYMPS file, you go to GameMaker Studio 2.3. This will not work in 2.2. It doesn't do anything fancy with structs or anything, but I think by this point in history, everybody will hopefully be moving on to 2.3. Go to Import Local Asset Package, find the location where you downloaded that file, chickens.yyMPS, and it's going to ask you to import some things. You can add all if you want. The optional folder is, as the name implies, optional, but it won't do any damage by being there. And now we can look into using it. So this is the 3D scene that I've been working off of for the past several months. Once it runs, there is a player cylinder, there is a sphere ball thing, and some shapes which have collision on them. There's no lighting or fog or anything. I've taken that code out. So what you want to do to set this up would be, firstly, when you start working with lighting, cluck set light ambient, and that's going to be the ambient light color. And I've noticed that GameMaker is sometimes having issues with recognizing these JS comments in these scripts. That's rather annoying. I hope that gets fixed soon. Anyway, we can define the ambient light color, which is, for those of you who don't know, the color of the light that is the color of objects that are not lit. And we can set that to black. Next, we can create some directional point and spotlights. Cluck set light direction. And these functions are meant to mimic more or less the built-in GameMaker lighting functions. Not draw set, draw light, define ambient, draw light, define direction, and so on. They're a little bit more flexible than those, though, I hope, hence the point of me making this in the first place. So we can say index 0 for the light. You can have up to 16 lights in a scene, indices 0 through 15. We can define a color, which will be white, and let's define a direction for that directional light. And I will go with 1, 1, and -1. Which is my usual direction when I'm just testing something out. I don't want to run that yet. Nothing's going to happen. As you can see, nothing's happening because there is one more thing we have to do. So this is shader based, as you can probably guess. In order to pass the lighting information to the shaders, as you hopefully know, because you've hopefully watched the other videos I've made on 3D lights, you need to set a bunch of uniforms. You can do that manually with shader set, shader, cluck, and there is fragment, unlit, and vertex. Unlit does exactly what you think it does. It contains no light information. Vertex does the lighting calculations in the vertex shader, and fragment does the lighting calculations in the fragment shader, which generally looks a lot better than in the vertex shader. You can set the uniforms yourself, or you can say cluck apply, and that script function, I should call them functions now, will set all the uniforms for you that are required for doing light calculations. And that's it. You can run the game and you will have light. All right. Here we go. We have a semi-lit scene. The light is coming in from somewhere off in that direction. I'm going to prefer to not have the camera clipping through the floor. and it's traveling in the direction that I'm looking right now. So that's a directional light. You can, as you can imagine, do this with other types of light. Let me comment that out. And have a point light, so we'll give that index 0. No, let's give it index 1. At the end, I will enable them all at the same time, and you can see what it looks like when they're on top of each other. We can give it a color. We can give it an XYZ position. Let's make it 250, 250, and like 100 in the room. Let's give it a radius. I'll give its radius 250. And you can also give it another parameter for the inner radius. I will get to that in a minute. First, let's just show what happens when you have a point light. Okay, cool, that's point lights. That's what point lights look like. As you can see, smooth shading, more or less done in the fragment shader. If you did it in the vertex shader, it would look rather strange. So the inner radius. Normally when you do point lights, you would just give them a 1 radius, and light would start at 100% at the light origin and fade out to 0% at the edge of the light radius. If you like math, you can also give it an inner radius where light will be at 100% until the inner radius and only start to fade out after that. So if I were to make this 160 and run the game, you would see that the center of the light is much brighter and it only starts to fade out around where I'm standing, about 160 pixel units from the 160 units from the origin, and that can be handy in some situations if you want to have a bigger light with a little bit more volume. And if you want to go the complete opposite way and have no cutoff and just have a hard transition from fully lit to not lit at all, you can set the inner radius to 0, and you'll see there's essentially the sphere where this point light has been created is unlit, and everything outside it is completely unlit. It's completely dark, rather.
Hey.
And that's a little bit of an extreme example, but this can be useful if you want something like a cartoony, flat-looking style with well-defined lights. Next, spotlights. Collect set light spot. So this is going to take some arguments. Once again, let's set this to white as the color so that it's fully bright. We can give it a position. I will give it 0, 0, and 100. And let's make its direction 1, 1, 0. And that is going to make it as if somebody at the room origin is holding a flashlight and looking out without looking up or down. Naturally, you can make the origin or direction or whatever you want it to be. I just prefer to not have to make up a number in my head when I'm recording videos. We can give it a range as well, and we'll give it a longer range than the point light before it starts to fade out. And we can give it a cutoff angle, which, again, if you know cone lights, is the angle of the cone. So you can see there is a cone. It's a little bit dark. Future self, you may need to brighten the video a little bit artificially because YouTube has been known to remove color information, gamma information, when videos are uploaded. You can see when I walk in and out of the cone, the cone correctly illuminates whatever amount of my player cylinder is inside the cone. Anyway, like with the point lights, you can give these an inner cutoff angle. So if the cone angle is 30 degrees, maybe you want the cutoff angle, the inner cutoff, to be 25, and that would cause the light to start fading out at a cone of about 25 degrees and fading out towards the edge. So the center is brighter now, not accounting for n.L. And as with the point lights, if you want these to be fully, if you want this to be a fully hard transition, you can make the inner cutoff the same as the outer cutoff, and you have a solid transition from dark to light, which, depending on the graphical style that you're going for, may or may not be what you want. Next, you can set these in real time. You can enable them all at the same time, as I said, up to 16, and they will correctly interact with each other. Let's keep the inner cutoff angle a little bit. Let's change the inner cutoff angle back to 25. This is done in real time, so you can have a light follow the player around. So instead of positioning the light at a set point in the room, you can have it follow the player around. This should be floating somewhat above the player's head if you want. Again, let's make the inner cutoff radius rather, a little smaller. And you can see the light is now following the player around. That's nice. In the demo project, it was not a point light that followed the player around, but a spotlight, which gave a bit of a flashlight effect. I'll leave that up to you. If you want to disable one of these lights will automatically be enabled whenever you set them. If you want to disable them, you can cluck set light disable, and you can give it an index. So if you want to selectively, for example, disable the spotlight at any point, this is during the draw event. If you want to do it during a collision event or something, or some other event, you can do that. I'm just going to say, if you hit the space bar, disable the spotlight, and you can turn it on or off at will. Goodbye. Hello. There you go. Lastly, fog. This also includes fog. Fog is very similar to lighting calculations, minus some dot products. Cluck, set, fog. And once again, GameMaker is not agreeing with the argument help, annoyingly, in the JS.comments. For some reason, this current version of GameMaker fails to recognize certain scripts when it comes to syntax highlighting. You can see these are all the variables are unhighlighted, all the local variables, and the JS.comments are not appearing in the function name over here. That is a bug which I hope they fix soon. Anyway, this takes some arguments. You can enable it or disable it. I'm going to enable it. You can give it a color. I'm going to make it, for example, C. You can make this any color you want, but fog usually fades things out to black. You can give it a strength, which is 1. I'll get to that in a minute. That is not part of the built-in GameMaker fog, which you may be used to using. A minimum distance, which I'll make like 500 or something, where the fog starts to take effect, and a maximum distance, which I'll make 800, where the fog takes effect completely. So there's now fog. Things fade out at a distance, in addition to being lit, as you can see. This is pretty straightforward. The only difference, the strength parameter, the third parameter that this takes, you can set that to 0.5 if you want the maximum fog strength to be something other than completely faded to a color. So if you want something to only be partially blended at a distance, you can do that. Maybe you want things to darken a little bit when they're far away, but not completely fade out. If you were to make that something like 0.9, it would be much darker, but you'd still just barely be able to see them. As you can see right here. That is fog. It's pretty simple. And that is it for Luminous chickens, I think. If you want to use this, the link to where you can download it from itch.io is in the video description. It's free, although I would definitely not object if you want to do a voluntary payment, which itch's business model is kind of based on. Otherwise, my name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and chickens and making games. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute towards my game dev shenanigans, there's a link to that in all the usual places. Otherwise, I tried to post a couple of videos of this type a week. Normally 2, this week is going to be a little bit more than usual, due to various circumstances. I hope you all found that useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Edward Holt, Indie Punch, and Zenith for supporting these videos. If you want your name in the credits and to force me to pronounce them out loud at the end of every video, head over to the Patreon page in the video description and join the fun.